Hello, welcome to Strategic Management, and I'm going to continue the discussion about how firms pursue strategic development in order to achieve growth. Now, in a previous discussion, I looked closely at the directions that are available to firms to grow. In particular, we looked at ANSOS Market Product Matrix and had a further discussion about diversification. In this discussion, I'm going to be looking at the choices of method which are available in order to pursue those chosen directional opportunities. The choice of method, as with the choice of direction, has to be in the context of a firm's particular situation and where they want to get to. There is no one single method or one single direction which is always going to be the best. It depends on the situation and the objectives of the firm, how their choice is to be made. The choice of method is generally decided upon the basis of ensuring that appropriate resources and competencies are available to the firm when they follow the chosen direction. So, for example, if a firm decides to grow in a market development strategy, then they may need resources or they may need experience in the particular markets in which they've chosen to grow. And therefore the method has to find a way of providing that experience and knowledge. So there are a number of, or to be precise, there are three areas of methods which firms can choose from: organic or internal development, mergers and acquisitions, or joint ventures and alliances of one form or another. We'll look first of all at organic development. Organic development is very much a do-it-yourself option. It's how a firm grows using its own resources and competencies. It doesn't look for partners, doesn't look for target acquisitions or mergers. It perhaps reinvests the profits that are made by current operations in order to grow them. So it will mean expansion through extending the capabilities and particularly maybe the market reach or the product range by investing in the organization's existing structure and resources. This is probably the most common form of development method. It's what most firms do most years. It has got some good advantages. The basis of the method is that it's using the existing knowledge and learning of the firm, and also it's extending that knowledge and learning. So it's building a firm basis for strong competition in the chosen sectors. Unlike acquisitions, then a large capital sum isn't required at the beginning of the investment, but the investment can be made over time as the plans unfold. So that can help with the gaining the right level of investment in order to fund the growth. Because you're not looking for a partner or a target acquisition, then time isn't taken in finding the most appropriate partner or acquisition target. And importantly, it means that the firm maintains its strategic independence. It's not beholden to a partner or a merger with another firm to decide, which may start to change the way the firm works and its particular objectives. Of course, also, it means that any profits made are not shared out amongst different parties, but the original firm maintains those profits. Or, of course, also suffers all the losses on its own. Another important factor in considering the benefit of organic development is that it doesn't come up against one of the major problems with acquisitions or mergers, and that's the problem of mixing together different cultures from different firms. So all firms have different cultures, and one of the great difficulties of merging firms is to accommodate the differences in the cultures that exist. However, there are some disadvantages. The scope of the development can be limited by the knowledge and learning experience that exists within the firm. And also, compared to other methods of development, it can be a very slow process. And if it's too slow, of course, then the competitors manage to develop faster and gain advantage over your firm. Mergers and acquisitions, on the other hand, which is either combining previously independent companies or acquiring a major share in a target company. There's much more publicity surrounding mergers and acquisitions. People are much more aware that this is a method of development. Mergers and acquisitions are slightly different. Mergers are often seen to be a fairly friendly method, whereas acquisitions might more often be a hostile move. So there are slight differences in terms of defining each of them, but the outcome is the same. In most cases, a firm will be acquired, and that might be incorporated independently into a large portfolio, or it may need to be integrated or merged with an existing company within that portfolio. So we can look at some facts and data surrounding mergers and acquisitions, and this shows the number of deals that are made on a global basis across a long period of time, and also the value of all these transactions. And you can see that over time then there are peaks and troughs in terms of the level of activity in mergers and acquisitions, and this often corresponds with the ups and downs of the general economic environment. So sometimes there's plenty of cash and there are plenty of targets available, so many deals are made. Other times firms are less willing to invest, there's less confidence, and therefore fewer deals are made. Here's a simple list of some very large mergers and acquisitions that you may be aware of that were announced or started in 2015. And there are different varieties of mergers and acquisitions in this list. You're probably familiar with Pfizer and Allergen. So that was an acquisition of similar companies, so an element of consolidation in industry, one competitor acquiring another one. Similarly, Anheuser-Busch acquisition of SABMiller was another example of consolidation in an industry whereby one brewer acquired another one and became a much bigger brewer. Royal Dutch Shell acquired the BG Group, or the British Gas Group, so they're both, Royal Dutch Shell is really based on oil and BG is based upon gas, so they're complementary, operating in a similar area of utilities. Further down the list, again, you can see a firm you're probably familiar with. Heinz acquired Kraft Foods, and again, an example of a complementary acquisition. Whereas the one above that, Dell, acquiring EMC Corporation, Dell is trying to move away from software and hardware and moving into business systems or consultancy. So they acquired EMC Corporation in order to move their firm away from their traditional basis of hardware and software, which they found is becoming more and more competitive. So you can see the large sums of money that are involved in these level of mergers and acquisitions. So whilst there are lots of big ones, there are also many, many much smaller acquisitions. So why do people go ahead with mergers and acquisitions? One of the key factors in this method of development is that it reaches the objective very quickly. If you wish to, as Kraft Food did, if you wish to acquire a greater share in the European or the UK confectionery market, particularly the chocolate sector, then buy Cadbury's and you very quickly acquire all the resources, experience, the distribution, the brands in that market, and almost overnight you've gone from 0 to 8% market share in the area in which you want to grow. So mergers and acquisitions enable very quick growth to take place, the acquisition of the missing resources and competencies which you have to be successful in a new product or new geographical market. And by acquiring companies, existing companies in the area in which you wish to grow, rather than adding to the competition, then you are consolidating, which reduces the number of competitors and of course growing the firm gives the opportunity for economies of scale. And it's a very quick way of showing growth for the stakeholders, satisfying your shareholders perhaps for their need for growth. However, there is some wariness around the mergers and acquisition activities. There are lots of people who make lots of money, so the bankers, the advisors, the lawyers can earn fees in the millions of pounds for acting for these firms during mergers and acquisitions. As long as the deal goes through, they make their money. Whether or not ultimately that acquisition is successful doesn't affect the level of their fee earning. So many investment banks, of course, make all their money through advising on mergers and acquisitions. However, a word of warning around the word synergy. Whenever a potential merger or acquisition is announced, straight away the announcement will start referring to synergies, the concept that 2 + 2 = 5. So the suggestion will always be that we put these two different companies together, we'll be bigger and stronger, and we will also be better, and we'll be able to find efficiencies. We might be able to make big savings in our distribution, or we'll be able to make great efficiencies in our manufacturing facilities. So people will frequently talk about synergy, but all too often synergy is like Scotch mist. It disappears. It can never quite be found. And this is illustrated in this proposed virtuous acquisition cycle, the very basis for acquisition. So a firm considering an acquisition of firm will be presenting its case to the shareholders, and they'll talk about the greater scale that they can achieve, which will give them improved productivity. They'll talk about bringing better skills to bear, which will improve the management, which will also increase the productivity. They'll talk about operating perhaps across a broader scope of markets or product areas, which gives them access to more customers. And at the same time, improved management will also increase the customer base. The broader scope gives them expanded distribution, which gives them more access to more customers. More customers gives higher revenue. Improved management, increasing the number of customers, will also improve that revenue. Improved productivity gives higher operating efficiency, lower costs. Higher revenue and lower costs leads to much better margins. Expanded distribution gives a higher market share, and with the higher market share and the improved profitability, then the share value increases, which gives funds for further acquisitions. So the more you do, the better you get. The better you get, the more you can do is the basis. But it's said anything between 50% and 70% of acquisitions fail to meet their strategic objectives. They fail to deliver value to the variety of shareholders. And some of the reasons for this, that there is a lack of clear strategic intent. So why is one particular firm being targeted for acquisition? What's the story? How will it benefit the parent company? Sometimes the problem becomes that too much is paid for an acquisition. And most often, the reason for the failure is that those promised synergies never materialize. And that might be because they were over-optimistic in the first place. And also it might be because those synergies can't be realized because the different organizations, are not properly integrated because of the lack of experience or competency in integration management. And a very common cause for failure in acquisitions is a culture mismatch between the two different organizations. All organizations have their own culture. Even firms which are operating in the same market, serving the same customers with the same products, they will have different cultures, and it can be very difficult to bring these different cultures together. And that's one of the essence of integration management that is often missing. So whilst all the numbers may add up, that the accountants and the strategists can forecast great savings and great growths in revenue and areas for improvement, those hard numbers fail because the soft people issues are overlooked or are not managed sufficiently. Another problem can be in terms of the success of acquisitions is that inadequate due diligence has been performed, so the buyer has not fully recognized what it's buying, and those problems emerge only once they've got full ownership. It's very much a case of buyer beware. It's very much like buying a second-hand car. When you buy it, it's all polished up in the best of conditions, it looks nice, it runs well, and it's only once you've bought it that you start to notice that there are some serious problems buried deep within the car which are going to cost lots of money to fix. So how can you go about ensuring that an acquisition is successful and genuine value is created, principally for the shareholders, of course? First plank in your success: buy it cheap. If you acquire the business at below the real value, you've got plenty of scope in order to fix any problems and to have available investment where it's needed. If you can genuinely bring better management to bear, then whatever the problems are, you should be able to fix them and be able to integrate it into your existing organization. And key, of course, is that there is a clear, sound reason for acquiring the particular firm. And if you've bought it at a fair value, you can manage it better, and there is a genuine and logical reason for having that business within your portfolio, then you have a very good chance of successfully integrating the firm and eventually creating value. The third option then, in terms of what method to pursue, is in the area of alliances. And these can come under a variety of different names: joint ventures, consortia, networks, franchising. They're all slightly different in terms of the exact legal nature and the way in which the alliance is formed and the basis of it. But in essence, they're all very much the same. Again, as with organic development, it is a fairly common form of development. It's also accessible to firms of all different sizes. So you're probably fully aware that McDonald's grow geographically around the world by franchising. They sell the right to individuals or to other firms to manage a McDonald's outlet. So the franchisee invests money, provides the local management, and they buy the right and the operating systems and all the ingredients and so forth from McDonald's. And they share the profits they make from McDonald's, as well as buying lots and lots of the services and the raw materials from McDonald's. So that's a fairly large scale of alliance. You can see other large scale joint ventures between, say, people making or firms making new aircraft carriers for the Royal Navy, a huge undertaking in which no single firm has sufficient experience or resources or knowledge in order to make a complete aircraft carrier. So many different firms are brought together in a joint venture in order to complete this complex and risky venture. Or they might, an alliance might operate at a very small scale. A number of start-up or entrepreneurial businesses operating out of a small business centre might club together in order to buy office services, office materials, and so forth. They come together and increase their buying power to negotiate with different suppliers. The whole basis of alliances, whatever the strict legal nature of the alliance, is a focus on sharing costs, sharing risks of the opportunities, sharing resources and knowledge, and coming together to offer specific experience and knowledge and sharing that with their partners, who in turn offer other resources or knowledge. Individually, the firms may not be able to pursue the particular opportunity, but together they can do. A good example of that is the basis of the National Lottery. Camelot, who were originally set up to win the license from the British government to run the National Lottery in the UK, was composed of firms like Cadbury's, De La Rue, Thales, and others. None of them had any specific experience in running a national lottery, but they had various different areas of knowledge and experience, which if they brought it together in a consortium which existed outside their parent companies, they had the joint ability to run a national lottery. And one of the big benefits of creating this third-party organization outside the realm of the partners within this consortium or joint venture is that if that venture fails, then it doesn't affect the business of the parents. If a merger fails, it brings down the whole company. If an alliance or a joint venture fails, just that part of the business is closed down and the parent can carry on. So importantly, in an alliance, whilst all those different resources, costs and risks, so forth are shared, the losses are shared as well, or looking more optimistically, then the profits are shared between the various partners in proportion to the contribution they've made to the alliance. So the factors that are required for a successful alliance, first of all, there must be trust. There must be clear performance expectations. What are we trying to achieve? There must be clear goals and organization. Who is responsible for what? And there must be a high degree of compatibility between the various partners. But that's not as difficult to achieve as mixing together the individual cultures of the different partners. So it's easier to achieve compatibility between the partners than it is to achieve integration in a merger. So to sum up in terms of the options available when seeking growth, there are 4 different directions that can be chosen. All might be thought of as different degrees of differentiation. And there are 3 different methods of development. And the methods are chosen on the basis of filling a resource or a competency gap most often. None of the directions and none of the methods are always the best one. There isn't like a golden ticket. The option or the choice of combination of direction and method has to suit the particular conditions of the firm at the particular time and the objectives they want to choose. So there's a variety of permutations of choice, permutations of which choice of direction with which choice of method. And at some point then, those different options need to be considered and they need to be ranked in terms of which is the best permutation. So a decision criteria need to be established, and these can be ranked according to a variety of different criteria, such as suitability, acceptability, and feasibility. And these criteria and the framework for using these criteria, applying these criteria, is explained in the core textbook in the appendices. So you can read more about that on page 261 of the core textbook. There's some specific reading about strategic development in chapter 9,